Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at what it means to be a friend of Jesus and what we can learn about being friends from Jesus. In the week one, we looked at what is a friend versus what is an acquaintance. And then last week, Dennis taught us about David and Jonathan, and how that shows us that we really need that one close friend that we can bear our emotions with and that we can just really be close with. So today we're going to look at John chapter 15 and be in verses 12 to 17. And the main idea of this is that Jesus sets the example in friendship by showing us that we are to love our friends, even if it costs us. So let's just read it. Let's get into John 15, verse 12. It says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than someone would lay down his life for his friends." So what is Jesus talking about? In verse 12, we see that we are to treat each other the way that Jesus treated us, which is love. And we see in verse 13 that the greatest form of love is to die for someone. And just to be clear, most of us aren't going to have to die for our friends. In the military, you might, but most of us will not have to do that. But we still are to be giving of ourselves for our friends. And Jesus could have said, greater love has no one than this, than someone would give $1 million to his friends, or someone would throw a birthday party for their friends, or someone would stand up for their friends in a fight, or someone would invite their friends or take them to church. And you see, that's not what he said. He said, greater love has no one than this, than someone would give his life for their friends. And why did he say that? He said that because Jesus is our measuring stick, and you can't get any better than that. So Jesus sets the bar really high. You can't go around saying, I'm the best friend forever of America. No, you're a friend, you're going to be a good friend, but Jesus is the best friend that anyone could ever have. And Jesus might invite them to church, but not like Hosier. And you know the song, Take Me to Church? Do you guys even know what it's about? I hear you singing it. We asked you what it's about. Some of you think it's actually about God and something good. It's actually not. If you look at the video, it really helps us explain what the song is about. And the video paints the church as enemies of homosexuals and Christians as people, as part of a group that hates them. And it's not true, first off. But then if you look at what the song is about, I'm just going to read what Hosier has to say about the song. It says, the song is about asserting yourself and reclaiming your humanity through an act of love, turning your back on the theoretical thing, something that's not tangible. He's talking about God, and choosing to worship or love something that is tangible and real, something that can be experienced, or sex. It's very clear that Hosier believes, and he's trying to sell the belief that we are to worship something real, sex, versus something that is not real, God. First, those are incorrect statements, but that's what he's saying in the song. And the reason I said Jesus wouldn't take his friends to church is because if you follow Hosier, you're not following Jesus. He will lead you and your friends away from Jesus if you hold to these beliefs. He says, turn your back on the theoretical thing, God. Turn your back on God. That's not songs we want to be singing. And I know it's catchy, because as I listened to it, it's stuck in my head and I'm singing it. And I just had to remember what it's about. And it's just really important that we just know what we listen to and how it affects us. And look with me at verse 14. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. And first, just to be upfront, this verse doesn't tell us that much about being friends with other people. It tells us about how to be friends with Jesus and what that means. And I don't want to hear you say that you don't have any friends. If you're a believer, Jesus is your friend, and he's the greatest friend. I told you, nobody can measure up to his level of friendship. In verse 14, it tells us that friendship with Jesus involves obedience. And this is why I said it doesn't relate, because later and before this, Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Okay? Jesus ain't no branch. You and your friends, you're both branches if you're believers, but there's a difference. So that's why he says we need to be obedient. It's not saying you need to be obedient to your friends, okay? Your friends are not Jesus. And Jesus defined friendship by obedience. And friendship is more than a casual acquaintance. It's coming together and doing things that you like to do together and not forcefully or anything. And the difference between a friend and a servant, what Jesus says, is in the level of knowledge, the level of knowing what's going on. And the servants, they're expected to obey, even if they don't know, even if there's just it's their job to obey. And a friend, they voluntarily adopt a plan. And like close friends, they'll know some stuff about you. They'll know the good, the bad, the ugly, and that's good. There's someone that you can trust with your information. And look with me at verse 16. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. Guys, Jesus chose the disciples and empowered them to bear fruit. And Jesus didn't wait for them to say, hey, Jesus, can we follow you? No, Jesus said, follow me. And Jesus initiated the relationship. And this is very critical in our understanding of our relationship with Jesus. Jesus initiated the relationship. God sent Jesus. Jesus died on the cross. Now we can have a relationship with him. And God stirred a desire in your heart at some point for you to want to repent and believe the gospel. So Jesus started this relationship with you. And this is a very cool thing just to understand. And then verse 17, he repeats his command to love one another. We're supposed to love other disciples. And let's just take a real quick shift to, if we're supposed to be Christians, we're supposed to act like Jesus. So let's look at some things Jesus did with the disciples. First, he puts others first. He puts the disciples first. But we know this because Jesus went to the cross. He died for others. We see him praying for the disciples, praying for others. We see him being inconvenienced. When Lazarus had died, Jesus had to go 20 miles. It's a day's journey to go raise Lazarus from the dead. That's an inconvenience, if you ask me. So Jesus was put others first. And then he knew the disciples very well. He went fishing with them. He ate with them. He helped them become better disciples. And Jesus also, he hung out with tax collectors and prostitutes, but he spent most of his time with these disciples. And Jesus never caused them to stumble. We know this because he never sinned. So if causing someone to stumble is sin, if you didn't know. And so if Jesus didn't sin, he never caused anyone to stumble. And then he stayed out of drama. And I don't mean that he stayed out of the hard things like we talked about in week 1. Jesus stayed out of drama like as in gossip. Jesus did correct the disciples when they had wrong beliefs about who was the most important in the kingdom. But he didn't go around after that saying, hey guys, Peter, he's stupid. Like, how come he doesn't know what's going on? What Jesus just shows us how to be a friend. So if we're supposed to be like Jesus, we should do that. Put yourself in those statements. We should put others first. We should know the disciples well. We should not cause them to stumble. We should stay out of drama. And that we will be better friends for that by following Jesus' example. And if you don't have close friends, be a friend to someone. Be a friend and watch what God does. See, you'll probably get a friend out of that. So in your small groups, just please look at these verses. We want to live our lives by this book. So spend some time doing that.